I've just hit the record button at last. And Helene, welcome back. Thank you so much for coming back so soon. We had you on during the year and we were talking about your amazing Big Heart Strong Hands project, and which was absolutely beautiful, and the emails that I had following were absolutely exquisite. So thank you for doing that. But you're back to talk about something else today.
Yeah,
it's your fine art portraiture.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me back. Such a pleasure. I'm such honored to be here with you and see your lovely face again and talk with you and share some things.
Now, you made me cry the last time, okay? So you're not going to do it again tonight, all right? It's not going to happen. I've been rehearsing. So fingers crossed anyway. And Helene, if this is the first time somebody's tuned in to us and kind of come across yourself, could you just give us a little bit of background, who you are, where you're based, how you got into photography and things, really? Do you mind doing that for us and things?
Of course not. I'm from Oslo, from Norway. I have my studio. We are here now. It is in a barn just outside of Oslo. So where it used to be cows, now it's a photo studio and other artists. I came quite late to photography. I worked like 25 years as a fashion designer, so I have this background, but I wanted to be a photographer when I was a young girl, and it finally turned out to be able for me to live from my passion and bring with me what I learned as a fashion designer earlier. And I dream and I breathe photography. It's my life. We talked about this a little earlier, that we need to do good things for ourselves. So you find me out in the ditch photographing flowers when I'm, myself in private, and then looking into AI, in artificial intelligence, and I love to teach. Everything that is good, with photography is relaxing, it's artistic, it's creative, it brings out the best in many people. I think it's a wonderful hobby and it's a wonderful job as well. So I love to photograph people and landscapes and little things and big things and nature and fashion and also fine art, which we are going to talk about today, and share some of my things and some tips and tricks and how I got to this. And
how did you transfer from fashion into photography?
Well, that was easy because as a fashion designer, I didn't have much money, so I had to pick up the camera. And I had my knitting studio that time in Estonia, so that's how I ended up in Estonia doing this project and such. So I couldn't afford a photographer, and my daughter, she was maybe 14 years, so she had to be the model, and I bought a camera, and it took off from then. And people said that my images were good, and of course, some were good and some were not, because I photographed Victoria at home with some IKEA lamps that you used to read, and well, it kind of worked out, and I got back to my passion because of I had the need to have images for selling my clothes.
Excellent. I was lucky. I had a sister who was 4 years older than me, and she didn't mind to be in front of my camera at all. So she was my muse for the first year, kind of thing with it. We all need a little muse, isn't it, But anyway, look, we're about fine art. Let's I'll just give you the screen. Let me just make you the presenter. We have rehearsed it for those of you kind of watching the screen beforehand. Make presenter. There we go. So we're going to be talking about 8 images. But we've got some of the before and afters, isn't it? The shot as done.
We have.
And then basically I can see we've got a few of the backgrounds there and everything else with it. So without delay, take it away with the first image.
Yeah, can you see my screen now? Full screen?
It's perfect. Yeah.
Good. So I thought I would start with this image from Caroline. It was taken at a workshop in my studio. But it's such a simple image that everybody actually can do. If you have like the backdrop, it is an old curtain, and she's sitting there. She's very clean dressed up. Some of my students brought this color, and I thought it worked nice for the image. So this is just straight up to the camera. She's lit with LED lights, with video lights, which means the light is a little bit harsh in her forehead here. But it's very simple, and I think what I like about it is how she's looking at the camera. There's some little things going on down here, which is like a crystal that I bought in the flea market in Paris and hold to my lens. So I thought it was interesting just to start with a very simple image and show you don't need much. I think for many people that do fine art photography, they use a lot of props, flowers, beautiful dresses, and then that's the picture. For me, I like to have more the person in focus and then work on my backgrounds, backdrops. So I will show you the final image, and here it is. So if I go back, you can see a little bit of retouch on her face. I worked on the color to make it more even, and then I worked on the colors. And it's a sky, just a simple sky that is put in the backdrop. It was clever that she was photographed towards a blue curtain, so it was easy to replace the background. This is done some years ago. At that time, it was more difficult to make selections in Photoshop, but now it's really easy. And so I thought, okay, I will start with a very simple image, and I really like this image because of her looks. It's like a timeless image. I think she has been modeling for me a few times, and I think this might be my favorite image of Caroline. Do you have any questions, Mark?
Yeah, I've got a few anyway first. We're waiting for the questions to come through. I've got some questions from there that was in advance anyway, as I was saying to you before we went live. Let me just bring my question panel out though, because I forgot to do that. 1 second, because I'm sure they're going to come in. So yeah, as far as how much work is done in Photoshop and how much work is done in the RAW, that's questions from me really. So what from the original image would you be adjusting?
That's a good question. I always start in Lightroom. I think I tried out Capture One. It doesn't work for me. I really love Lightroom, and especially now when all this eye masks and everything works really nice. So if you look at this image, I start with flattening out, taking down the highlights, and opening up in the shadows in Lightroom, and do as much as I can there. And then going back, if you look at her skin, I do frequency separation. I try to make her skin a little more painterly. I do some dodging and burning, like highlighting here on her cheeks, putting some red on her lips, little highlights here, like makeup artists do, but not so much, I think. I didn't want to change her, but I wanted her to have beautiful skin, because if you go back to the original, then you can see here, it's the burnout of where the light is hitting her. And also, I think it is important with fine art, or actually with images, that you do something with the colors, make them more filmatic, or you know, more like the movies, that it's different colors, that the blue it's leaning towards teal, for instance. I think I love that you put like a teal also sometimes in the highlights, and sometimes a little red in the shadows, but working with the colors in a quite simple way, but making a more artistic, or then you just stop because you see there is a little different. It's not the ordinary blue sky, but it's something done to it, but still really simple. So
it kind of reminds me a little bit of, you know, Vermeer, that kind of Dutch painterly kind of quality and things really. Is there somewhere that is there something that you kind of lean towards when you're looking for inspiration or anything? Or again, that was a question from me.
Yeah, I have, since I studied at the Norwegian Academy of Arts and Crafts, I've learned about painters, so I have that with me. I'm also interested in clothes, like we had a study, you know, the history of clothes. That was one of the subjects I really loved when I was doing studying fashion, but also the painters, the way of using colors, the way of using light. I like soft light, which you will see. And then I will work and transform it a little bit afterwards. So I try to photograph very flat. using the feathering when I use strobes, using V-flats and reflectors and video lights to make, think about window light, think about the painters, how they were using the light. And when you say Vermeer, what a compliment. That was wonderful. I want to hug you.
Yeah, you know what I mean, though. It's got this lovely Dutch quality. I know the lighting is flat on the face compared to like a girl with pearl earring kind of thing, and that kind of thing, but it still has this essence. And I think that's what I take in fine art photography, is that you take an essence of something and then you mix it in the right way that is good for you, and then you kind of you put something together and things ready. What about color toning and everything else? Do you apply like a finish at the end? Because quite a common thing is to add a solid color and then kind of blend it in overall the finish. Is that something a technique that you use, or how do you end up with the finished image?
Yeah, I can do that. I use curves, I use color balance, I use hue saturation, all these kind of things, and it's kind of developing through the editing process. Some of the images can take a few weeks to finish because I'm not sure. I have to go back and look, and finally it's there, and of course using a solid color that you put in blending modes is important. And also when you add the background, then I use different blending modes, usually one layer in multiply and then one in screen, and then I mix and match to make this work together. It's also more easy so that you get the fine hair, the details with the hair that you don't look cut out. And colors are really important to an image like this. Also, one thing I always do when I've finished with, all the layers, and there can be really many, it can be 200 layers or something in my files, which are huge, of course. Then I always make my sharpening, which is kind of an edge sharpening technique that I use. And then I add a little bit of grain, very fine little grain, so that it won't be harsh. And then on the top, I make a flattened layer with everything, like a merge all, Shift, Alt, Option, E on the top, because then you will avoid the banding. So both the noise and that flatten everything on top, but still keeping all the layers below in case I want to change or need to change anything. So my files are sometimes very, very big, huge files sometimes.
Very good. Just before we move on to the next image, there are some questions coming through. As far as the catch light in the eye, are you tempted to add white in when you're doing it, like the paint? I used to do it to my negatives when something wasn't very sharp. We just actually put a little bit of dab of kind of Tipex, it was at the time, actually into the eye, and that instantly does it sharp. Painters do it with kind of putting white into the eye to make you look at the eye before anything else. Is there a technique to do with the eyes that you use at all?
Well, I do different things depending on the image. I also like to do a lot of layers in between in the frequency separation. Then you can also add this light without ruining the pixels. And also, I think one of the things that this look classic is also the way Caroline is looking at us. How, she's straight up in the back. She's there, and she has this like 100 years going back, in time, and it's a timeless look in her face. And so yeah, I do a lot of tweaking with the makeup. Sometimes you can make a blank layer and put it in soft light to make the lips a little bit stronger red, for instance, and do some rouge on the cheeks, and of course make the catch lights that she looks at you. I always photograph using a tripod. It took me a long time to be willing to use a tripod, but for this kind of images, this is important because you don't need to put all this ISO into the, but this actually is so that then I can have a little slower shutter and she can still look at me. And And then I can, go back and fix the clothes because it is on a tripod. So I will highly recommend that. And it took me years to agree to use a tripod. I thought it was slowing me down, but I love to do it, and looking at every pixel as good as I can afterwards. I always do. And if there are flyaways I don't like, or if something is burned out, or using all the techniques that I have learned and still try to make it simple. I think
Good.
that's the thing. And if you go back, you will see with the color here that I have added for the color, that I make the clothes look nice. I use the liquify for the clothes, sometimes for the hair, not so much, but all these techniques that we have available.
Can you talk us through the lighting and then through the camera kind of lens and so on with it? Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, well, I have a Nikon D850. And 105 millimeters. This is shot at f2 and 1/52, 1/50, and the ISO is 400. And then just a simple constant light with a softbox on, and then I have white walls around her, and I also put up reflectors so that I get the light bouncing around as much as I can. But it's actually taking in the hallway just outside of my studio, so it's very simple lighting. And
what kind of size of softbox is on the LED light or the continuous light?
Well, it's not so very big. I think maybe 80 centimeters or so. I can send you the specifics later if you want. But that's some years ago, which means it's a rapid box called almost so much has happening on the LED lights or the recently that you can get really good lights at less price, and it's easy to work with. It's also easy to work when you have students because you don't need the triggers and so on.
Yeah, so, very good. Good. A couple of questions coming through before we move to the next image. Somebody has a huge problem with lighting. Seems to have people with hollow eyes. Is there a foolproof way of lighting a face, please?
I think you must look to see what is happening, and of course, if you with hollow lights, do you mean that the lights are deep in the head? Is it,
I think
dark?
it could be dark eyes from sockets, no catch light and things really.
Yeah, well, if you use a reflector and you have it on like a tripod stand, so that you can, or a light stand, so that you can put the reflector and use it to catch back send the light back. I think that's the best advice. And look at what you do and test out some light, test out how your camera is working, how much how light pictures, or do you need to take dark pictures to get out the details? It's a try. Sometimes you have to try and fail, but this is really easy lighting. It's just this softbox, and then you have some white walls and of course a V-flat or a paper, a white curtain. I think that is helpful because it is bouncing light around in a beautiful way, which is the natural way. I don't know. I hope that helped. And the editing process.
Of course.
Of course.
Anne asked the question, in fact, so it's Anne. I was just answering Anne for a minute. And I definitely look for the catch light in the eye. Take the lighting into a bigger source, so it's a softer light source, and make sure you've got that reflector below the subject, just to pop a little bit of light back in, and then start to move the light away and start to move the reflector away until you kind of get the problem back. But if you kind of have your light at 45 degrees and you see a catch light in the eye, you will absolutely guarantee to create modeling on one side of the face, and you'll have a Rembrandt kind of nickel light, the smaller the light source and the higher it is. But look for that catch light in the eye, and I promise you, you will get it time and time again. So not to confuse, I was speaking to Anne Walter, not Anne Helena. So just goes from there. Could you just expand on the avoiding the banding again, please, that you talked about?
Yeah, and just a comment also with the catchlight, you can always copy catchlight from one eye to another, you know.
Or add a little bit of white in.
Yeah, but also if you don't have the proper catchlight, you have it in one eye, that can happen. Then you can clone, you know, and copy, which is all right, I think, to do, and also work on the light in the iris, that you add some dimension, some little colors. Yeah. So, and going back to your question, you know, I do the final sharpening. When in Lightroom, I do an intentional, a little sharpening first, where I don't sharpen the whole picture. I hold in on my, I think it's option when I look at the sharpening panel, so that I have like an edge sharpening at 60. You will see when you hold in this option button that you don't sharpen all of the picture or all of the image, because if you want to soften the skin afterwards, it's better that you don't sharpen it first. So that's in Lightroom. I use the feathering, or, you know, the edge sharpening there, and then I work on the image and do everything I can to make it as good as possible, and then I have a final sharpening on top. And it can be different techniques. I have this soft gray layer, but also I have an old action that I got from some Swedes many years ago that works wonders. But you can use all kind of the sharpening technique that you think works best for the high pass sharpening. This is, and then a small noise on a gray layer. Like 3 pixels and 50%, to make a little details into the pale or the white parts of the light parts of the image and the dark parts, so that it's kind of smoothing the image, but you won't see these particles, you won't see this noise, because it's so little, and it makes the prints more beautiful, and it makes them more beautiful when you put things on the internet as well. And then on the top, this merge layer, when you hold all these 4 buttons down
Shift,
on the
Control, Alt, T. Yeah.
Yeah, Shift, Alt, Command, C, E. Yeah. And then you get everything on a flattened layer on top. You keep all your layers below, but then you will not get the banding, at least less of it. So it's a good technique, and we can write it somewhere if people want to.
I've just sent it. I've just sent it.
Yeah.
I've just typed it in and sent it in the question panel anyway.
That's
right,
good.
should we move on to the next layer?
Yeah.
The next image, I should say, not the next layer. Question before we start to talk about this image. How did you first kind of represent yourself in fine art? Was it instantly you knew what you were trying to achieve, or was it just playing around until you got results?
It's both, because it started with an image of a friend of mine, and we thought, okay, let's play a little, and it was really bad, the result, and she was tired, and she wasn't, you know, I often use materials to make dresses out of, and then it was like I worked the whole Christmas to understand how I could work with layers, and all of a sudden it fell together, you know, I got it together. Sorry for my bad English. I haven't been speaking English for a long time. So I hope you understand what but it was a process, because, you know, I finished photography school. I took the 2 years, and I was 53 when I was finishing school. So I had to find out where to go and what to do. And part of me loves to do this kind of portraits, and I will continue to do that, because I love it so much, and it's an output for my creativity, and I love these pictures that are not such big smiles, and I love documentary too, actually, but so it was a process, but also something that I really want to work with in the future.
Perfect. Let's go to the next image. And remember, you don't even need a model. You can take your own photograph. You can do your selfie.
I don't think
the next image we have.
Yeah, that's the next image, and I thought I would show you how it was looking in the real life, because the picture that you will see, that is the finished one. It's different colors, and of course you don't have these scratches here, this is a pop-up background that I bought. sometimes in America. I was taking a workshop with Joyce Tenneson, the wonderful photographer in Maine, and she showed me how to use this pop-up background. So I got it from B&H in New York, and I will use this pop-up background a lot because I like the colors. So to say this is, of course, I had this beautiful Selma. That is my model. And you see, this is the ghost. This is through the crystal again that I love to use sometimes to make the different picture. So she's here and she's there in a way. And the flowers are here. She's there. Of course, this is needed some work. But I like her, you know, how she's posing. If you see, this is very simple. It's just like a corset or something very simple. You can use a strapless. And then my beautiful necklace, which I bought in Turkey when I didn't have money, but I still have it and I love it. And okay, I thought this was something that I like her, you know, how she was looking, and it was pretty sharp. It's important for me that the eyes are in focus. So this is shot with the same camera, which I use a lot, Nikon D850, 105 millimeters. Then we are at f3.5 instead of 2, because then you are a little bit more, you will get a little bit more in focus, and 1/50 a second, and ISO 400. And the light, it's constant light, but also in my studio, I have windows in the roof. So some light comes from the top and some is, you know, adding a little bit. And then the white walls, which I have, I call them V-flat because they do, you know, some white walls that you can move around. So the finished image is here. So she's still here. I removed something of the, you know, the ugly things, and I worked with the colors to make it more stylish or more different. And she's looking at me, which I like. It's a quiet picture, but still something is happening. I called it persona, and I got a silver medal for this in the Norwegian competition, actually. But it makes it different because nobody else can take the same picture, and I couldn't replicate it myself because things happen when you hold this crystal in front of the lens and play with it. And all of a sudden, she was there with two faces, and something happened to make it a little different. And I think that's the strength of the picture. It's not only a beautiful girl, but it's also something happening and changing. You know, if you go back here, you see the green colors are gone. It's more purple. I edited out some things. I added a little bit of things, but mostly it's how it was, you know.
Brilliant. There's quite a few questions coming through about continuous light and LED light.
Yeah.
Is it your preferred lighting now, or do you use flash at all?
I do. I use some strobes. I never use this pop-up flash, I think, because I never get the hang of it, and I really don't like the look of the images. So I try to make my images look as they were shot in natural light. And still I have, you know, we are in the north, so we get very little daylight in the winter time. So I needed to add some light. And I think the LED lights are easy to work with. They're not so expensive anymore, and I can see what I do. I think that's a great benefit, that I am never surprised because I see what I get. And you can move it around, and all the good benefits. So I think I have 3 of them that I use, sometimes on the backdrop also. Not here, I think, but actually this is the light that we are lighting me now when I'm here in the webinar with you. I put up the lights and then I see what I do.
Very good. There's a question beforehand said through about digital and AI of the future. Do you find this is going to be a benefit for you, or do you think this will take something away? What's your thoughts on AI?
Yeah, I will show some pictures later in this presentation where I use IE to create images. But I think it is very important that you are transparent, that you say what you do. You know, that you don't, I will not make up people. I don't want it to look like photographs. I want to use it for my backdrops. I want to use it more artistic. I'm working on some things. Maybe it's going to happen that we will like it. I don't know yet. So for me, it's a creative tool, but of course it's very scary if you think what can happen with it. But I think we need to be transparent and say that we use those programs. I use Midjourney mostly, and it's a great creative outlet for me also.
Cool. Should we go on to the next image?
Yeah. So this is Sophia, and she is shot with studio light feather with a huge octabox. I think it's like 150 or close to 2 meters. And I use the edge of the light instead of putting it directly to her. I move it around because you can see she's also flat. This is the original image. And I think I put a LED light on the background, on the backdrop, to make it, to give a little light there. So I thought I wanted to show this is where it all started. As you can see, I used a silk material. This I got from eBay, this crown, and she's looking straight at me. And this time it's the same camera, the 850 Nikon, which I love. It's my 58 millimeter, it's f11, so it's more in focus, everything. And then it's 1/200 so it's quite more fast shutter, of course, when I use the strobe. But like the feathering, I think it's really important, because then I can also use the light to put it into these white walls that I move around, so that it's not directly hitting her. I'm not a technical photographer. I'm more into the artistic, and I don't look at the histogram, and I look to see in the screen what I get, and I'm more eager to have a good connection with my subjects, and then I fix everything as best as I can afterwards. So I ironed, of course, this silk, pure silk cloth. But when you go to the next image, you see I have been ironing this afterwards. If I go back, you will see it's a more, yeah. So I took it into frequency separation and ironed it. It's a wonderful technique that you can fix clothes, and not only skin, but you know, for interiors and everything you can kind of fix, because you work on the textures in one layer and then on the colors on the other layer and mix it all together. So I thought I really like, you know, the colors and everything, but I started to work on this and I wanted to do something special with it. I could be happy now, but I thought I wanted to work more with it. So I put the same image, but played with it. It's a little bit more out of focus, and it's darker, put it in front. And then I started to add some textures. And then my screen now is very dark. I know. Is it dark what you see?
Perfect. Or is it black and white, but it's still there.
Yeah. And then I added.
Yeah. It's only at times if their laptop is losing power, it sometimes goes dark on.
Yeah. No, it is connected.
Okay. Cool. No, but it's perfect my end.
Oh, that's good. So, you know, if you look, there's a little bit of difference. I started to add textures, and I wanted to make it a deeper image. I wanted to tell some story. She shouldn't be only a pretty girl, which she is, but it's something tells me about her eyes. And then I decided that the final image should be like in more old golden colors, bringing back some of the colors, but a little green. And it could, of course, be pure black and white, but that's ended up being my version of this image, and going back and forth and trying and cutting out and putting back and adding textures and getting finally what I like them. So.
And there was a question through just now about textures. Do you download the textures, or do you take these textures yourself? Do you actively shoot textures wherever you go?
Yeah, both. It started that I bought some things, I got some things, I started to learn what textures can be. So I have a huge library on my desk, which is only dedicated one catalog, Lightroom catalog, which is only with all of my textures, everything that I can put in, and you can find old walls. You can, you know, it's kind of a mirror effect here. And I know if you are going to send your images into competitions, sometimes it's required that you shoot your own textures, and so it's important to know where you are going to use it. Here I think it's a mix of everything. The important is to find texture that is working, and that you start to use the blending modes and see what brings out the image. And you can use textures to bring light into things. In color dodge mode, for instance, you can add light with putting one texture in color mode, in color dodge, and using it up and back, and and little low opacities, and using the masks in Photoshop to mask in and out what you don't like, and ending up with many layers. Very often I start with a smart object, and then, because if I decide, let's say when I go back to this image here, and I decided I want to put in another portrait of Sophia, I made sure to make it a smart object, because if you don't do that, you will lose the quality when you make this image smaller and bigger. And I stretch and I move it in and out, but when you do it as a smart object, you don't ruin the qualities of the image. And then of course, when I'm done with doing all my little things, and if I add some blurring or some things, then I can make it another normal layer, but then I've done all my things. But that's an important thing. So yeah.
Perfect. Let's move on to the next image, shall we?
Yeah. So here is Stine, and she is shot in this mirror in my studio. And as you can see, actually this image was behind. We were going to start to shoot, and we tested the light. This is natural light from the roof. And it's then at that time I had a Nikon D5, the sports camera, but it was too heavy, so I switched it not so long ago. 24-70 millimeter is one of my go-to lenses. It's a f2.8, and I use it at 70 millimeters. It's shot at 2.8, and it's 1/200 seconds, and the ISO is actually 1600. So it's a pretty hard image to work with. And if you see here, this is part of the mirror. This is the pop-up background that I showed earlier, and so the mirror she is there. But if you look closely, I didn't like the color. I started to work on it, and actually I was going to put flowers in her hair and do different things with it, but it ended up like this instead, because the flowers and everything was too much. And I like the way she's looking at me. I fixed the color. I worked a little bit on her clothes. I took different parts of the mirror, and so I made the frame. So it's in reality it looks like this now, but this was part of the image here, kind of, and I took different images to put it together. And of course, you can't crop an image like this, because if you take away the golden frame, I think this big mirror that I have must be 100 years or more, then you're losing something of the image. And working on the colors, making it more predominant, the textures here, working on the details, working on the garment, and especially, and also, you know, with little dodge and burn, and trying to make all these things that if I had planned it, the technique or the quality of the first or original image would have been better. But I think I managed to make it a beautiful image, and I was actually awarded gold for it. So I think people liked it, and it was also a part of the photography World Cup. Norwegian participants. So people liked it, and I like a lot how she's looking into the mirror, and also where she's there, and so maybe I was inspired by this image to create the previous that you just saw with Sophia with the two faces. And mirrors are really fun to work with. Yeah.
Very good. Next image, please.
Yeah. So, and as you can see, it doesn't always start out very nice. But this is a picture that I was having a teaching of fine art photography workshop in a very good photography store we had here in Oslo for a couple of years back, and I thought I would bring this image because you can make your clothes very easy. So this is again material. This is some color I have had for 30 years or something. This is something from a thrift store, and then her dress is also some material that I bought, and I thought, okay, I like how she's looking. She's dressed up like in the 1920s or something, and I started to work on it. And if I look at my notes here, this is still the Nikon D850, the 105 millimeter. We are now at 3.2, and the shutter is 1/60, ISO 400, and another constant light, which is shot through a big translucent umbrella, look through umbrella, that gives this very soft light as well. So you see, it starts out not really nice, and the different clothes could have been nicer, but in a workshop you do as best as you can. So I started to work on it, and then I cleaned up. I used the liquify, I used all the techniques I can. I worked on the color, I worked on her hair, I worked on the colors to make it more artistic, and then I was quite happy with that. And then one day I started to play, so I thought, oh, what happens if I take this flower image and add it in a soft light blend mode or something, and end it up like here. So if we go back, you see there are a lot of gold textures in here. There's a lot of colors. It's added little I got from here and there, but also I worked a lot on the garment to make it as nice as I could then, because you don't always have expensive clothes, and you can do a lot with if you have some materials and make it a special. And then that's my neighbor's flowers shot through a glass, and then here the final image. And the colors plays a lot of the story, and I use also exposure from alien skin sometimes. I use some photography actions from Bella Kotak, and an English photographer. It's called Only the Curious right now. She has great actions because she works very painterly, and it can be good sometimes to invest and support other colleagues with their things, and it's fun to play with.
Very good. Question about color. How do you just read the question, Mark? How do you use or choose color for the portrait in front of you?
Yeah, and since I had this education in the Norwegian Art and Crafts Industry School for 4 years, I always worked with colors. I started out with this like in 1978, and the colors has been a huge part of what I see and what I do as a fashion designer, and then now in as a photographer. But it's when you work with colors, it should be something that you like, because if we do images that we like, some other people will like them too. If we do what we love, people will understand that. And then playing up, of course, with her skin, making her, it's important with images like this to try to make now this is the young girls, but make the persons look that they are not kind of a real person, because the skin colors is a little tweaked. They should look a little bit unearthly, or from another place, because then people stop and look at your things. Because she has contact with me right now. Silje looks at me, but it's also her hair. It's her. I played with the lipstick hair to make it match the color of her coat, or whatever we should call this cape, maybe. And then red and green, bringing in some more teal colors is always good to play with different kind of greens. Like using the triangles and using your gut feeling, making something you think is pretty, something you like, testing out. It's always, you know, if you are unsure, because all screens are different. I work on an ASO screen. I have one in my studio and one at home, so that I'm pretty sure that the colors come out quite okay. But if you work, for instance, late in the night, then you will discover next morning that, oh, my pictures, they are so light because, you know, or so dark because of the screen is lit during the evening. So always best to work with colors and the finishing in the daytime in an even lit place. And you can also make your own private Facebook page, you know, or your own group where you test your own images and look at them on your cell phone or on an iPad or such things, because then you will see how people are seeing it mostly, instead of, you know, guessing, because all screens are different. But on the phones that we have today, or the pads that we have today, it's a great indication if things are looking all right. And yeah,
I know quite a few. I know quite a few who photographers who have private Instagram accounts for that reason alone. So they just upload just to actually kind of see what it looks, because they're very involved with their social content supply. So it's actually more important what it looks like on a phone, believe it or not, than it does actually anything else. But again, it's another screen to actually analyze from, isn't it? Really. Somebody just said, where can I buy that wallpaper from?
Let's make a business.
yeah. Should we go to the next image? I absolutely love that image. I love it.
I like it too. Yeah. So this is also straight out of the camera. As you can see, she's sitting there. She looks at the camera. This is Alexandra. And this is again the same camera, the 850. It's a 58 millimeter, which is a great lens. It is f6.3, 1 and over 200 seconds, ISO 160, and then I use the studio lights feathering, as I talked about earlier, so that the light is not hitting her directly, but into my white walls that I move around. You know, I don't know what you call it in English, but this what you use when you're building, you know, for isolations. This huge,
just like a polystyrene kind of slab, insulation slabs. You can buy them and things really without any trouble.
Yeah, and I made some feet on them, or at my partner Paul.
Bicycle stands work good,
so that I can move them around, and I use them to bounce the light all the time. And so I think, you know, she looks at the camera, she sits there, and this is the first image, and then I cropped it, and then in Lightroom, this is what I did in Lightroom to open up the shadows, open up the curls in her hair, going down. You see, it's quite flat. Taking down the highlights and opening the shadows till I think I have something to work with afterwards. And then the red backdrop, it's a gravity backdrop, which I like a lot. I have been using it for many projects, and I love to play with the red color. So we are moving to the Netherlands now, to the Rijksmuseum, where you can download images like this. This is Jack van Looy. It's the Orange Festival image or painting from the 1890 till 92. Okay, I think this is a funny picture, and you can download images there free. You get them in JPEG, but if you want to order as TIFF, I think that's possible too. You just create an account, and then here is a book, a Chinese book from the same, the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. So I took this image where you see I have put in the book here, and then the dancing from here. I flipped it because I thought that was really funny. How can I use this? And how can I use the book? So if you look at her picture here, this person is dancing. Here are some Chinese, like a 4 sign, some Chinese hair. And then I worked on the colors to, you know, pop her. And I like to do that because images or paintings that are old, museums often let you download those, and then they are in the free so that you can use it for your own artwork. And I think that made a beautiful backdrop for my Alexandra image, I think. And it was such a fun project to do, working with the colors and putting things together and making her sitting on the scene.
There's a question just popped up asking about copyright and selling the image because it contains art not belonging to you. How is that looked at?
Yeah, that's easy to say, because when the artist is dead, I think it's maybe 70 years, you can use it as you want.
Okay.
So this is not a problem, because you can download for free. But if this image was, or this painting was made from an artist that is living now, that would be a problem. But this person is dead some time ago, and I was allowed to download it. So you should be pretty safe with that.
Somebody's just asked, where did you say it was from again? Sorry, the download of the museum?
Yeah, Riksmuseum.
Could you spell that out?
REJKS museum.nl. It's a huge, and in the Amsterdam, where you can see Rembrandt and all those beautiful paintings.
Thank you.
REJKS museum, Rijksmuseum, they say, or something like that. I can't speak Dutch, so. But you can download a lot of beautiful images from there. And also, if you Google, or if you search up they have a search engine there. If you write Chinese books, I guess you find this one. And I have used it for a couple of images, and I like this science. I don't know what it is saying, and I hope it's all right, you know. But yeah, it's a fun process.
Good.
Maybe play, yeah. Beautiful. And then I was happy, and then I worked more on the colors, and then I was more happy. Going back and forth and looking at, as we talked about, on the little screen, on the big screen, yeah. So I went to the next image. Is that all right?
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
So Sophia again, I shot it with the same camera, the 850, 58mm, f4 1/80, ISO 400, and she gets lit from the top from my roof window light. Sitting there, just sitting there, right? Looking. And then I started to work on her, and I was quite happy when I was finishing the image. I worked on her skin, her hair a bit, the colors. At the same time, Midjourney, people started to make AI images. So I started to work with some Klimt inspired images and ended up with this image. It's not exactly the same, but it's the same style. I couldn't find. So this image here, I think the backdrop consists of 5 different images that I put together. And when we know the development now of Midjourney, of course we will see this is in the early stage, but it's kind of funny, or I kind of like it still. The good thing when you work in layers, I could always go back. I have learned to use the mixer brush lately to even out things. So maybe I will repaint the backdrop one day if I feel like this, or it can be like this. But when I created this, I had so much fun, because you know, you start to make AI images looking like this, and you thought, oh wow, this is can be something. And yeah, so I think this is fun to work with, and nobody can create the same image. And I think it's building to the story and the colors and how she's looking. And in a way, this could be her here. And Klimt's working 100 years ago with everything. He's my favorite painter.
I absolutely love Klimt.
Yeah.
There was recently a program on in the UK here to do with there was a painting found, and they were trying to authorize whether it actually was a Clint or not with it and things, really. And it was a fascinating program. But can you imagine finding one?
Yeah.
Just
and
unbelievable. Anyway, lovely.
I still have one on the wall that I've had since 1980 or something, and I have my third version of Judith image. Okay.
Somebody was asking about your AI program that you use, and is it Midjourney?
Yeah. And it's easy to use. You find a lot of courses out there or YouTube videos. You get very small images now from, but you can use the upscaler and you can put things together. And it's kind of endless possibilities. And these programs are getting more and more better. You know, it's fascinating how quickly everything is getting together. Hands are still difficult, but if you think about this like a little child that is learning to to be a person, then it's getting really quickly what is happening in the AR world, and something I really enjoy to work with and see what is coming out of the computer and getting better and making things that I couldn't make up in another way.
Excellent. Should we go to our next image?
Yeah, that's the final one. So think about questions if anybody has something they want to ask me. So this is Ingeborg. I got the mirrorless camera, which is Nikon Z7. So this is shot with this camera. My lens is 24-70 and I shot it at 56mm. f4, 1/80 and ISO is 160, and again the constant light. So I was teaching a fine art class last autumn, so this is the picture. And if you see here, I use again this crystal to create something is going on here that you don't find, you know, it's something happening because I hold this old crystal to my lens and move it back and forth to see if I get something. And most of the images you can throw out of the window or in the dustbin, but this I think had something that I was looking for, how she was looking at me, the yellow branches with the berries, the clothes, and I started to put in, this is also a Midjourney landscape. And I think I asked to make a painting of Scottish Highlands or something. And what I like about it, this is like the painted quality of the image. You see that it's not trying to be a photograph. And then this is the final image. So if you go back, you will see you have like the storm coming. You have it could be like in Scotland, Old Man of Storr, which I have been seeing, but it's not quite like that. But it's a beautiful landscape, and I wanted to use it as like she's part of it, but it's not supposed that she is in the landscape. She's more in a painting. And then I add some textures on top. I worked with the colors. Of course, I worked with her skin. She has some freckles that you can see if you move close. But if I do that, it will look really funny on my bridge. So I shouldn't do that. And then working on the colors. And this is happening because I'm adding, using the blending modes again. With the multiply and then often screen on top to, you know, get things going, make it more like a painting. And I couldn't do this without using without other images, and it's fun to create them myself in Midjourney. And about the copyright, because it's these AI images are made from a computer. We don't have the copyright unless we do things with it. So I think this is safe because it's part of an image, but when we create AI images, we should make something to it that makes them ourselves to keep the copyright. But we don't know yet how this is ending up, you know, how we will end up, how governments will look at it. And so for me, it's a lot of creativity, fun, and making my days, yeah, I love doing all this kind of things, working with the colors and the people and putting it all together.
Brilliant.
So that's my last image, yeah.
Brilliant. Let me take the screen back. And I got some questions here. Whoops, cancel that. Make Mark the presenter. Show my screen. So if you're looking to see some more of Anna Helene's work, I'll just pop this into the chat panel now anyway for you, and obviously from there you can actually kind of link off. There's also the last time that Anna Helene was on was about the Big Heart Strong Hands project as well and things really, so please get off and actually see that. I did put this link in. Is this the correct one?
Let me put on my glasses. You mean link?
Is this the one that you're referring to for the downloads?
Let me write it here, okay? Let me see. I think I did right. Right.
Is that correct on the screen? Can you see it?
There we go. This should be the right one. Of course, if you, yeah.
That's the same one.
Yeah, and then you can get an account and download images, and you get this English version, of course, because Dutch is not
I'll
our
put that
language.
in the chat panel to you all guys as well and things. I think that's a really good resource idea. That's really, really great.
Yeah, and you find other museums as well in America and things where you can download images and use them yourself.
Brilliant. Okay, so let's hit some questions. How would you now some of these things we might have covered before, but let's kind of just run through them. How would you describe your style as a fine art or a portrait photographer?
I like honest pictures. I like that people are looking at me. I don't like that they are making fake smiles. And something that is an image that means something to the person on the image or on the picture, and also to the viewer, I think. I love photographing people, and I love to make them a good version of themselves. But also documentary, and as I did with the old ladies in Estonia, that's something else, you know. But
good. Which of the 8 images that you just showed is your favorite? That's cruel. Whoever wrote that one in.
Okay.
Pick 1 out of 8.
I have to pick 2, 1 and 8.
Okay.
1 and 8. That's a very difficult question. I try to show you images that I like a lot.
What inspired you to start to look at specializing in fine art portrait photography?
Because it makes my heart sing. And my education and everything, yeah.
What is your approach to capturing the essence and personality of the subject as a fine art portraitist? Good questions these are. I'm glad I left them to the end.
Well, you know, I think it's important that people look at me, that the image is kind of timeless, that the styling doesn't carry the picture away, but it's still something that you could have on a wall, but not necessarily because it is of yourself or your family, but something that you would like to look at, something that reminds me of the old masters in a way, something that it's interesting, something that is worked through, something something that I like to look at.
Perfect. Do you have a favorite background or location that is your starting point for a portrait?
I think I can make it very, you know, for the fine art portraits, I can use anything as a backdrop because I can change it afterwards. As you see from these images, I like to work in the horizontal mode because it gives more room to create a story around. I think that's one of the things that I prefer. And then working with the colors, working with more techniques, developing the techniques, and we are so lucky now that it's so much easier to cut out the person and make the backdrops more nice. And we are living in a fantastic time when so much are at our hands that we can use. So just in the recent years and the last year with AI and everything coming apart. So I think I can use any person. I can use just a blanket and a plain backdrop and make something beautiful out of it.
Perfect. What's your favorite aperture?
I think if I was going to shoot and decide, sometimes things are happening, but I would shoot like f4 and using the video lights, I think.
How do you work with clients to plan and execute a fine art portrait and a session?
Yeah, we need to talk. They need to look at my images, and then we need to decide, where it's going to end up. What you want for it, and I need to have some free hands or free creativity to work with. At the same time, I need to talk with the person to see, okay, how is your room? How will it be framed? It needs to be. I don't deliver files. I want to be delivering the whole image or the picture, also at least as a print. And I do a lot of printing myself. I think that's a great part of it, to see things coming out of the printer and deciding, the whole process until I'm happy, which can take a long time sometimes.
What is the typical turnaround time for delivering a final edited image to a client? So if it wasn't for yourself, how long do you think that you would be taking to finish an image?
I think I would say 2 weeks. Because you need to go a little bit back and forth, and I think also it can be important to talk with the client in between if it's really something that should, fit. But usually people are happy with what I do. And
there's a question about could you walk me through your editing and post-processing, but we've done all that in depth. But there was another one just popped up by Les, which was, how long on average do you spend editing an image, and how long does a session last?
I think we need like 4 hours for a session. If we want to do, it can be done very quickly, but if we want to try out different garments and play with these things and work on the look and everything, and it can take 1 day, it can take 2 weeks. It is depending how easy it is to get the image that I want in the final image. So it's not something you get very rich on doing. I don't do photography for money. Actually, I do it because I love it. But of course, we need to pay our bills also. So it's a hard mix sometimes to get things going on. That's also why I love to teach, to tell and teach what I have been learning, because nobody would have thought that I was able to make the things I do today. And that's because I'm stubborn. I love to learn. I love to develop myself. I never give up. And I can sit there and work 1 week on an image and still find little details and be happy to find them. So
okay,
learn.
Keep learning. Life's a learning curve, isn't it? If anybody says, oh, I don't need to be taught anything, walk away from them because they're an ostrich. Anyway,
I want to learn something new every day. That's my motto.
Absolutely. How do you handle print and display options for clients or for yourself to showcase the fine art portraits, either in their homes or in a gallery? Good question.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Of course, I have samples in my studio where we are now. And then lately, well, I don't know, but I'm planning to make some really cool images using the AI to make interiors, to show where the images, how it can look in different scenarios. But I want to do it artistic. And then, of course, people have images. You can find programs online and do this kind of things. But I think talking with people, discussing, showing what you have, how it can be, different framing, and take it from there. Also, of course, my supplier has an internet page where we can look at frames and this kind of things and work with good production companies that is delivering things for you.
And Helene, once again, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, listening to you, seeing your beautiful images. Thank you from the most expensive place to buy a beer and a pizza in the world, Norway, or at least that I've experienced. It's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. There's so many thank yous coming through, you won't believe it. So I'm sure you're going to be back again next year. You know that, don't you? I'll just give you the heads up already.
Let's do something fun there then again. And thank you so much for having me. And
we should set a challenge that everybody's got to create their own little fine art selfie.
And I need to put in one thing. My mother would have been 100 years today, and she was the creativity person in my family. So when I could pick a day, it had to be my lovely mother's 100 years. She is not here, but I'm sure she's watching from somewhere, and that she loved to be with us. And next time I need to come to see you and hug you.
Well, I'm sure she's there looking down, giving you hugs, brimming with pride and love. And again, you know, it's amazing that when you put love and passion into what you do, it shows, and you touch people. And I think as parents ourselves, we would want our kids to touch others, and you basically have touched hundreds. And obviously by the end of this, it'll go out, it'll be thousands kind of thing with it. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks very much. See you all soon. Thanks so much, everybody. You almost got me crying at the end again, didn't you? You bad girl. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.